Hi, I'm Devin from Careerified. This week in the living room, I wanted to talk a little bit about exploring careers in, let's say, unusual places. And what sort of prompted this was over the long weekend, I saw a post on Instagram from the National Ballet of Canada. They're hiring an IT support person. That's right, the National Ballet of Canada hires computer specialists. Most of the time when I've talked to kids who want to get into the world of tech or world of computers, they talk about the big ones, right? I want to work for Apple. I want to work for Google. I want to work for Amazon. I want to work for Facebook, those types of things. But it's much more rare for kids to think about the fact that IT is really a basic function of tons of different businesses. That means if that's an area that you're interested in and you've started to develop some skills in, you probably have an astronomical number of opportunities for jobs later on, but not if you're only thinking about the 3 or 4 companies that you want to work for. Likewise, if your teenager has been seriously taking dance lessons for, 10 years or so, they've been in competition, they've been in performances and all that kind of stuff, and they're now very laser focused on becoming a professional ballet dancer, it's very easy to get into the headspace of National Ballet or nothing, or handful of companies in Canada or North America or nothing. But I think it's really important for anybody considering any career, look at some of the other skills that you're developing. So for a dancer, for example, probably one of the rarest skills you're developing that most people do not have and aren't even interested in getting is being comfortable in front of hundreds of people on a stage. That's a huge skill. And that doesn't even get into stuff like discipline and work ethic and attention to detail and ability to memorize complex patterns. So there's something to be said for thinking about what other skills you develop when you're developing a central skill that you're focused on, like dance, like computer programming, and so on. Several years ago now, I was asked to come in and be a presenter. A bunch of teachers at a middle school in Toronto were organizing a career conference for their students, which was super cool. And so they had brought in 3 sort of guest speakers to do big keynotes in the morning, and then the kids were going to go to breakout sessions in the afternoon. It was pretty well organized. I was really impressed. My unfortunate luck that day was to follow Farley Flex as a speaker. Now, if you are at all familiar with the Canadian music scene, you'll recognize the name Farley Flex. He's pretty much a superpower in Canadian music industry. But above and beyond that, at the time, he was a judge on Canadian Idol, and Canadian Idol was a big deal. So all the kids watched it and everybody knew who he was. There were a couple of really interesting points that Farley put across in his speech that day. First off, he talked about how he loves music and he loves sports. And so he tended to get involved in any projects that involved either one. And in talking about his interest in sports and athletics, he started telling the kids about the statistics of the number of high school basketball players who actually end up in the NBA. And I don't remember what the actual numbers were. I kind of wish I wrote them down, but in the Google world, they're probably easily found. But let's say you had 5 million captains of the basketball team in American high schools. It's probably more than that, but let's say that's it. For every one of those captains of the basketball team, less than a dozen of them will play in the NBA and play at major league NBA level. And so you could kind of see the audience go, oh my gosh, I thought I was pretty good at basketball or soccer or hockey or whatever it was they played. So Farley followed it up by saying, I've been in a lot of offices for the NBA teams. I've been in a lot of their admin offices. And the funny thing is almost everybody who works in those offices is over 6'10". So he went on to explain to the kids that they had found a way to work in a way that connected them to the sport that they absolutely loved without having to play the sport. And quite frankly, knowing people who do play professional sports, it might actually be nicer, right? I mean, at least those guys can go play pickup basketball on the weekend. If you are a professional basketball player, you're not allowed to do that. So that's something to be said for that, for sure. So I really liked that message of it's not about the specific goal or the specific thing that you think is your option. You really want to look outside and go, okay, but how could I still be connected to this? So my tip for this week is think outside the box when you're doing career exploration. If you want to sit down with your kids and explore what kind of wider skill sets they develop when they're focusing on a particular skill, and what kinds of opportunities are open to people who develop those additional skills, you'll help them to see that there's more to life than just working at Google, just dancing in the National Ballet of Canada, or just whatever their laser focus is. And that hopefully will help calm some of those jitters and settle some of those nerves when it comes to deciding their career future. So that's it for this week. I hope you have a great week. You take good care, and we'll talk soon.